But first, and warning, I will show you some confronting video of violence. Now, one important thing, the dangerous thing that we've seen from these race riots is the normalisation of violence, particularly by the media left. A normalisation of violence, as long as that violence, of course, is aimed at, let's be frank, as long as it's aimed at whites. I'll give you two new examples. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually like ERNIE DINGO, the actor, the TV presenter, the inventor of the Welcome to Country ceremony. I like him and I respect his work. But I don't like what ERNIE DINGO has now done, or said is done, resort to violence. And I don't like the way that every media outlet that I've seen has presented it as forgivable, understandable, natural even.
WA's most celebrated Indigenous actor, ERNIE DINGO, has been caught in a violent clash after a racist slur at Perth train station. The 63-year-old says he whacked another commuter over an offensive comment. Tracy Vo, the television star, says he's copped discrimination all his life.
Now, ERNIE DINGO wasn't caught in a violent clash, he created the violent clash. Now, to be frank, I'd be angry too by the racist slur, which I won't repeat, it's effing whatever, that DINGO says set him right off. I won't repeat it. And he was right to stand up for himself. But whacking someone in the head, which is what DINGO first described in a social media post, I whack him on the right side of his head, causing him to fall over. Well, today DINGO backtracked on that. He said, oh, I didn't actually punch him, I just grabbed and shook his hoodie until he slipped over. Well, whatever version you choose to believe, it was the first one, I whacked him on the head, that the media reported and did not criticise. Did not criticise, even though ERNIE DINGO admitted that the man he hit, or shook, was said to actually have an intellectual disability. Now, that doesn't, of course, make the man's insult acceptable at all. But hitting, or shaking, hitting people with or without an intellectual disability, is that how we really build a kinder and more tolerant society? Do we build that better society with these race riots too, that so many journalists of the left have played down or excused?
Now, too many see the protests as the problem. No, the problem is what forced your fellow citizens to take to the streets. Persistent and poisonous inequities and injustice. And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Well, the law says that, but never mind that. Now, that's one thing, fighting racism being now seen as an excuse to be violent, which I find rather shocking. The second example, police violence, that's supposedly the big issue, and violence against blacks, the same. But violence by ethnic gangs, we're reporting that, could seem racist, so a number of media outlets choose not to do it, much at all. Last Sunday, a 15-year-old girl at Melbourne Southern Cross railway station was attacked by about 8 girls or women, most, if not all, of apparently African descent. Now, I'm not going to show you all of the attack, and I certainly won't show you the worst of it, but you will get the picture from this. That attack then got so brutal, the girl dragged to the floor and stomped on, that she was left with broken ribs. Now, it apparently started because the victim had spoken to a boy that the gang didn't want her to speak to. Now, I should make clear, it is true that this girl knew at least one or more of these girls and, you know, might have actually been part of their gang. Who knows? Still, it is hard to believe that there is no tribal or even some sort of racial dynamics going on in this pack attack. It's an us against them kind of thing that you're seeing, I think, perhaps. Now, two strange things about this attack. First, despite the dramatic footage, it's been out there for days, I saw almost no coverage of this anywhere in the mainstream media. Yes, on Channel 7, and yes, the Daily Mail and on 3AW and a posting. But apart from that, nothing. Certainly nothing on the left-wing Melbourne Age, nothing on the ABC, nothing on SBS. And these are all organisations that would have covered this attack for a week had 8 whites attacked an African girl like this. But the second point about this, the girl is so terrified of retribution, claims her mum, that she won't make an official complaint to police. But her mum says the girl actually does know one of the attackers, and police say they've seen the video, and so I've got to ask, why no arrests? Not yet. Why no arrests? Actually, there's a third point. There won't be any protests about this attack, will there? There won't be any riots, and nor should there be. But it's not crazy to conclude that our race protesters are not really against violence and not really against racism. Not all violence and not all racism.